What if you're living with two versions of yourself? One that experiences life in the moment, and one that rewrites your past and shapes your future. These two selves are constantly at odds. One lives now, the other controls how you remember it and shapes what you do next. The good news here is that once you understand how these two selves work together, you can take back control, make better decisions, and live a more fulfilling life. Today, we're diving into the concept of the two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. Understanding the tension between them is the key to unlocking greater happiness and personal growth. Let's break it down. The first version of you is the experiencing self. This is the part of you that lives in the present moment, the part that feels pain, joy, boredom, excitement right now. The experiencing self is constantly navigating what's happening in real time. Then there's the remembering self. This is the part of you that looks back at your life, forms stories, creates a narrative about who you are and what you've gone through. Your remembering self doesn't care about the moment. It cares about the bigger picture, your life story. And often, this version of you has a different perspective from the experiencing self. Now, here's where things get interesting. These two selves don't always agree. The experiencing self lives moment by moment, while the remembering self summarizes and edits those moments into a neat little story. And sometimes that story doesn't reflect reality. For example, imagine going on vacation. During the trip, your experiencing self might have had moments of stress, long lines, bad weather, maybe a delayed flight. But later, your remembering self might only recall the highlight reel, the beautiful sunset, the fun at the beach, the laughter with friends. The remembering self creates a more positive version of events, while the experiencing self lived through the stress in real time. Why does the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self matter? Because it's your remembering self, not your experiencing self, that makes decisions about your future. Your remembering self takes the complex, messy experiences of life and turns them into simple stories. It picks out key moments and emotions, edits out others, and forms a narrative that you rely on when making decisions. Here's the important part. We don't make decisions based on how we felt in each individual moment. We make decisions based on how we remember those moments as a whole. Let's take a vacation as an example. While you were there, your experiencing self probably had some tough moments, stressful travel, long lines, or bad weather. But when you look back on it, your remembering self recalls the highlights, the beautiful sunset, the fun with friends, the adventure. It simplifies those experiences into a narrative. That trip was amazing. And it's that story your remembering self creates, the good parts it remembers, that leads you to book another vacation. The experiencing self may have felt the stress, but the remembering self tells you it was worth it. The two selves don't just shape your decisions, they also define your happiness, but they do it in different ways. Your experiencing self is focused on the present. It reacts to what's happening right now. It seeks comfort and joy in the moment. On the other hand, your remembering self looks at the bigger picture. It doesn't care about the little stresses you felt in the moment. It's focused on how you'll look back on those moments later. For the remembering self, happiness comes from a sense of life satisfaction, from seeing your life as meaningful overall. Take a difficult project at work. While you're in it, your experiencing self feels overwhelmed and stressed. But after it's done, your remembering self looks back and says, "That was one of the most important things I've ever done." This tension between the two selves can leave you feeling torn. Do you chase immediate happiness, or do you push through discomfort for future fulfillment? The challenge is knowing when to prioritize the present and when to invest in the bigger story. Your remembering self will tell. Now that we understand the two selves, the question is, how can we balance them to live a more fulfilling life? Here are a few strategies. Number 1, be aware of the present. Take time to check in with your experiencing self. Are you enjoying the moments that matter? Too often, we ignore what we're feeling now for the sake of a better story later. Don't sacrifice your day-to-day happiness for the sake of a distant memory. Number 2, mindfully reflect. The remembering self will always create narratives, but you can shape those stories. When looking back on an experience, take time to reflect on both the highs and the lows. Don't let the remembering self gloss over important lessons or exaggerate successes. Number 3, plan for both. When making decisions, think about how they'll impact both your experiencing self and your remembering self. Balance choices that bring immediate joy with those that lead to lasting fulfillment. Both selves deserve attention. Here's the big takeaway. You are not just one person. You are two selves, each with different priorities. The experiencing self lives in the present, while the remembering self shapes your narrative. Learning to balance these two versions of yourself can help you find deeper happiness and make more intentional decisions. By understanding how your mind works, you can start to live more fully in the present, while also building a story for the future that you'll be proud to look back on. So, next time you face a decision or reflect on your life, ask yourself, which self is speaking, and how can I create a life that both of them will love?